Hey, welcome to another DCS video. Today I'm going to be going over beyond visual range combat and how to conduct this in the F-4. Um, if you look into the forums or in online spaces in reference to the F-4, you may see a lot of inquiries on how to go about handling BVR in this aircraft. Given that we're using an older yet more capable variant of the F-4, is still lacking like its more modernized variants like the Turkish 2000s Terminator series, the Greek AUP series, and the Israeli variant. So you're going to find yourself in situations where it's hard to really conduct yourself in a manner that can be deemed as successful. And what I want to go over is how I personally go about using this aircraft. Like you've seen in plenty of my videos, I always end up within visual range of a lot of the bandits that I'm encountering in the air, and I just want to go over how to go about putting yourself in a better situation to prepare to achieve that positioning given the constraints of your aircraft. Now, I tend to look into topics and research matters in reference to aircraft that are at I guess a technological disadvantage, because things like that tend to interest me if you're familiar with my channel or been around for a while. And one thing to understand is that there are ways that you can mitigate the separation in technology when it comes to these aircraft. You just have to kind of do your digging and try and find sources to read up on these kind of sparse topics. Like there was a interview I was watching with these F-3 pilots, Tornado F-3 pilots, how they were conducting BVR against the F-15 at the time that had a superior radar. They were going over the tactics that they used to get in close and confuse the enemy opponent, just like with the German MiGs when they were going up against the Hornets for Red October. Even though this is real life and this is a sim, a game, however you want to conduct it, at the end of the day, there's still a person behind that screen controlling a radar in an aircraft. And like those Tornado pilots, the goal was to disorient the aggressors or those pilots in a manner that degraded their situational awareness and made them ineffective. And what I'm going to go over is how I go about doing that in the F-4 online, and there will be an AI example so I can kind of talk through it. But I find a lot of success in the tactic that I use, and I think this will help some of you who want to try it or attempt it. Now, if you don't really have the experience there to even comprehend or enact these tactics, I wouldn't suggest it. But you know, I didn't really want to make this video because it is a bit of a higher difficulty level, but I'm going to try my best to kind of go over this, and you know, if you want to take the chance to do it yourself, then you can go ahead and try it. So I want to cover, I believe it's 5 or 6 topics in reference to going about conducting yourself in the F-4 in a Fox 3 environment against superior aircraft. Number 1, ECM. I use the ECM in the F-4 because when it comes to fighting at a superior opponent, your goal is going to be to degrade that bandit's ability to wage war against you, for lack of better words. You want to degrade or at least diminish their ability to even sort you or set up a plan of attack, almost disrupt their OODA loop, you know, observe, orient, decide. Last word escapes me, but you get the point. So I always start off with having an ECM, which is what I prepare while I'm on the ground before I get into the air. And then situational awareness. The F-4's radar is okay, but you're going to have a lot of problems with the pulse radar and ground clutter. You should know this, so it's really not going to be the best for building your SA. and that's not really how it was intended to be used anyway. You're supposed to be vectored to a target and then switch on your radar. And this may sound familiar because this is the MiG-21 in a nutshell. So you're really going to have to depend on if you either have a human GCI or AWACS. Now the AWACS in DCS is really shoddy. It's not good at all, to be completely honest. But you have to make do with what you have. And then cranking, which is something that I use when I get nearer to the bandit, notching, rapid altitude changes, and then the merge. So let's go over situational awareness, just the last bit. Typically when I am flying in the F-4, I find a place I want to orbit on the map, and I listen to the callouts. You know, if AWACS is giving me a bearing, range, and altitude of bandits, you know, let's say I have two bandits coming from the north with a separation of 20 miles in between. One's at 10,000 feet, the other is at 20,000 feet. These are things you want to keep in mind when building your essay. You want to generate a picture that can help you understand how you want to maneuver around the battlefield, if you need to go cold, if you can press an attack. AWACS maybe called out a bandit that was at 20 miles. You're calling for a bogey dope, and now he's giving you a call for a bandit at 40, but the one at 20 disappeared. You know, what happened? Did that bandit get shot down? Is he low to the deck and AWACS cannot sort that bandit anymore? So things like that you want to keep in mind. The F4 is really heavy on skill. Which is, like I said earlier, if you haven't had the time in DCS yet to really build up your essay, I wouldn't suggest trying this because it'll just lead to frustration. But yeah, situational awareness is big. So you're going to be using bogey dopes a lot because AWACS and DCS doesn't prioritize targets that are actually within your vicinity. You'll notice that the AWACS will start calling out bandits that are light years away, and it's just so pointless. So it's really frustrating at times, but that's kind of what we have to deal with. Point number 3, cranking. So if I've established a hot bandit and they're, let's just say, 30 miles out, I've found that the ECM, from what I've seen, is sufficient up to about 15 miles, 20 miles. So you have a bit of breathing room. So how I orient myself is that once I get within that 40 to 30 mile threshold, I start to crank because I want to increase the distance the bandit has to travel before they can get within their weapon employment zone. So like I said, the ECM, I'm kind of sure about the distance, but I don't really want to take any chances, so that's why I crank. You're wanting to close the distance while also limiting the range of your opponent. So cranking. Now, notching. Once the bandit's gotten to within 20 miles or so, I start my notch. And this ties into number 5. Like I said, with the Tornado F-3 pilots, rapid altitude changes. The Su-30 MKI pilots, I actually was reading a interview with one of their pilots about how they, perform rapid altitude changes and notching and things like that. It's pretty consistent with the situation here. So I go into the notch at about 20 miles, dive to the deck, and there's reasons for this. Now, I don't hit the deck until I'm ready to get into a position to turn for a merge. Here's why. Because I want to keep my communications with my AWACS. So what you'll find is that if you played online or not, you'll notice that bandits tend to disappear off your data link if you're a teen series flyer. And that's sometimes because they're flying so low to the deck that AWACS can no longer sort them. That is the plan here. So I go into my notch, defeat the bandit's radar, once again disrupting the situational awareness. And I do this at a distance where once the bandit actually achieves burn through with their radar through my ECM, there's nothing for them to sort out because I'm already in the notch. So imagine getting burned through in a target, and when you get the burn through, nothing's there. That's essentially what's happening. And once that bandit gets maybe a little less than 20 miles, I'm hitting the deck. Why? Once again, because I want to disorient the bandit. I don't want them to use data link or have any form of awareness as to what's going on in front of them. So I hit the deck, drop off data link. This may harm me a little bit because I may lose SA myself with my AWACS. it really depends. But at that time, I more than likely have already spotted the bandit, so I don't really need it anymore. So now we've destroyed the bandit situational awareness by not providing them with any information at distance beyond visual range via ECM. We've also destroyed the situational awareness because we've notched them and put them in a position where they can no longer effectively use their radar combined with the jammer. And then by hitting the deck and severing their communication, their extra set of eyes with their AWACS, they are effectively blind. Now at this point, we've gotten to a scenario that is all too familiar with the F-4. If you do any kind of research on the tactics to be employed, the Mark 1 eyeball. Now it's a battle of the eyes, who can see who, which sucks in DCS because the spotting is crappy. I wish it was more like IL2, but I digress. The F-4 has very large smoke plumes. Those engines generate a lot of smoke, like the MiG-29, which, albeit, was an issue with the German MiG pilots when they were going up against the Hornets, which is why, before they got to a point where they were going to merge, they would kick into mill power, or a mill power burner, so that they could pretty much get rid of the smoke coming from their engine, so they wouldn't be spotted coming in to these Hornets. Well, it's the same scenario here. I cut into burner, and then I start to begin my interception of the bandit along their flight path, thus eliminating the last form of situational awareness that an opponent can have, which is their eyes. Low to the deck, no smoke. This is the best scenario for myself, and I find that this tactic tends to work honestly 9 times out of 10. So that's my process in regards to getting the F-4 in close to a lot of the opponents that I'm facing. The RWR is another thing you won't really get. You won't get any kind of Fox 3 tones from what I'm seeing or based on what I understand. So it's really important that you eliminate the chances of an opponent even getting a shot off before you get to the merge, which is what we've effectively done at this point up until the 10-mile mark. Now what I'm gonna do is play a tac view of myself against an F-14 because it kind of just goes over what I'm talking about, and we can kind of just look at that for a sec, and then I'll show you an in-game example. Here I'm going up against an AI F-14, kind of speeding through it. But the F-14 is at about 30,000 feet. I'm on the deck, and I've already started my notch because this instant action mission thinks it's a good idea to spawn you 20 miles in front of a Tomcat. But I started my notch. The Phoenixes are coming at me. I'm not getting any warning for these because, top down, and I don't even think the RWR can detect them. So I'm staying in the notch. The all-seeing AI, as you know, is going to track me regardless. And I wait until I get to that 10-mile mark because I want to decrease the bandit's ability to fire any kind of Fox capable weapons at me so that I can force myself into the merge at full burner. The best place to be against an opponent that can outrange you is tight and in close. So now let's go to a multiplayer tag view. So let's see. So in this scenario here, I'm going up against an F-16, and it's just going to be a quick run through of what I discussed earlier. We're at about 13 miles, and I start my notch, and as you can see, I'm rapidly losing altitude as I dive to the deck to try and get below the bandit, so I can force him to look down into the ground and effectively get into that notch gate threshold, and also diminish his situational awareness via their AWACS. So now at this point, I've already spotted the bandit, and I'm in full burner, and I'm turning into him. And like I said earlier, I go in full burner because I want to decrease the chance of being spotted on the deck with that smoke plume that protrudes from the engines. That's very detrimental. Now at this time, I didn't even spot this second bandit. I could have got a 2-for-1 here, but never saw him. Like I said, DCS spotting is horrendous. So now the bandit starts turning in because he's more than likely to pick me up on data link because I'm starting to climb, and that's a splash. But keep in mind that bandit started climbing because I'm more than likely popped back up on data link, which is why he noticed me there. So now let's see this from his point of view. He turns in, and you can kind of pick up on the subtleties of him noticing that I'm there. So I'm going into the notch, and at this point, let me see, I think I'm playing around with the tack view, trying to get these markers out of the way, but I think I kind of just leave it alone. But nonetheless, I start my notch, and the bandit almost tries to turn back in, like he spots me on radar, is getting a pickup from data link. But then once I go into the notch, you'll notice he kind of was like, okay, I thought I saw something over there, but maybe I was mistaken, and he just kind of keeps on going and changes course. But as you can see, I'm starting my turn in to the notch, and I'm low on the deck, so at this point his situational awareness is gone because he's not getting any calls from data link, because if he was, he'd be turning hot on me. And he's not looking at me on radar because I've effectively forced myself outside of his gimbal limit. So now, watch when the data link kicks in, because keep in mind, he's looking straight, he doesn't know I'm there, but watch when you can tell I pop back up on data link. Because remember, I'm effectively below him. And this is me looking, and bam, he starts turning, because I've climbed back up, and I'm more than likely popped right back up on his data link, but at that point, it's too late, and he's out of there. So now, I will end this video with the actual gameplay footage from that tack view, and other than that, thanks for watching, and have a good one.
Okay, Nails, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Overlord, 11143. Request bogey dope. 143, Overlord, 143, Overlord, 11, Bra, 321, 4150 at 4000 knots. Overlord, 1113, request picture 4180 at 6000. 143, Overlord, 11, pop-up group, 0284160 at 3,500 knots. 143, Overlord, 11, pop-up group. Overlord, 11143, request bogey dope. 143, Overlord, 11, pop-up group, 0174140 at
Nails, 8 o'clock.
Overlord, 11143, request bogey dope. 143, Overlord, 11, 0184140 at 3,500.
We have at 12 o'clock, 4 miles.